thank you for doing this interview with me about your climate career. So, Kera, would you mind introducing yourself and kind of telling me a little bit about what you do at TCI?
Yeah, so my name is Kera Daughtery. I'm a recent graduate from Texas State University with my Bachelor's of Science in Electronic Media. And here for TCI, I'm their Leaf Communications Fellow. So helping anything comms related, social media. I'm working on revamping the TikTok and then just any type of communications that go out across social media platforms, kind of helping get that out this summer.
That's cool. So, how did you get into a career in climate? Like, why inspired you? How did you get here?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in environmentalism in some way. I grew up in a really small town in Texas, so I've been surrounded by nature my whole life and had kind of the value of being a good steward of the environment. But I guess it really started for me back in 2021. I joined a leadership program whose focus was teaching college students to be good leaders and creatively solve problems that we're going to deal with in the future as we join the workforce. And so they wanted to focus around sustainability, each cohort. So my cohort was about sustainable transportation. So I learned a lot about infrastructures in cities and how transportation can kind of hinder some communities, which kind of led into the social justice aspect of things, also the economic impacts of different transportation systems. If the city relies heavily on cars or if they have a good public transit system, how that can affect different communities. And then also the environmental impacts of our transportation system. So that kind of opened my eyes to sustainability as like a career path because I didn't really think of that before. And so following then, one of our speakers worked for TEDx for the university. So I emailed him, met with him, and then joined their team as a social media intern. And the theme that year happened to be green. So again, I was kind of in this area of sustainability and like climate change. Learned a lot there too. And then that's how I met our sustainability coordinator at Texas State. So I met with her, and then she let me know that they had an internship program, and I joined on as their public relations intern that next fall and stayed with them until I graduated. So over the past 2 years with the office, I learned a lot about sustainability, a lot more than I knew before. That's how I knew about the three lenses. That's how I learned about how interdisciplinary sustainability is, a lot about higher education and how sustainability action plans work. And that's here getting involved with the community. So that kind of led me to want to continue pursuing sustainability as a career.
Oh, that's awesome. So, tell me a little bit. You have this like degree and expertise and skill in communications. Talk to me about how that can contribute to a healthier climate as we're, talking about climate careers.
Yeah, well, I think the number one thing that I've kind of learned over the like jobs that I've had in the climate sphere is that a lot of scientists aren't always the best communicators, not to stereotype them, but
I've seen
that
it happen.
sometimes it's easier for someone who's in more of a comms field like me. Like I can understand some of these terms and like different things, but since I have the background in communication, I know how like I know the steps and the strategies to take the things that they want to tell communities about and water it down in a way that it's easier for people to digest than if they were to hand people a 10-page research paper. So I think the number one thing is just being able to connect with people. As one thing that I've kind of taken away from being a comms person in this sphere is that if we're able to reach people in a way that's not so doom and gloom like we're used to seeing when it comes to conversations about climate, I think that helps. It just helps people realize like they can make a difference in the climate change conversation and there are tangible steps they can take and it's not so heavy on them. And I think if we can kind of rewire the way people think about climate change and the situation that we're going through now, it helps a lot as opposed to making people feel like there's nothing they can do about the situation. So I think that's kind of what I found being a comms person and trying to help with this fight that we're going
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, it feels necessary to have
Yeah.
communication if we're trying to make like a global impact and really reach people.
Mhm.
It seems pretty obvious when you say it like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, getting into the climate space, what are some of the challenges that you faced, like in the climate sector?
I think one thing that I noticed is just being a Black woman in the climate space. I don't typically see a lot of people who look like me doing the same work, which can be discouraging at times. I've been in rooms where people don't really want to listen to my input, and also being like a young person, that's another thing that kind of gone through is like I don't have the experience per se that other people would want me to have in order to like take my voice and my thoughts and opinions as valid. So that's the number one thing is just trying to keep pushing through, even though I don't, my voice isn't always heard or isn't always uplifted as someone that should be considered in these conversations, which is what I really like about being at TCI. Definitely is so many women being involved in these conversations. Having someone like Nyla to get to talk to and see another Black woman in a director position in an organization like this is so inspiring. I think another thing is just making people understand the climate conversation is about so much more than just environmentalism. Like, yes, that's very important, but we also need to make sure that we're talking about social justice and climate equity, how communities of color and people with disabilities, older people, are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis than people who live in more affluent neighborhoods. I think also when we think about the economic impacts, like just making sure that we're not just focused on one single thing. And also, there's this documentary that Leia told me to watch called Merchants of Doubt about how like plastic has become like big tobacco and like using the same tactics that tobacco used. And so just making sure that we're not letting our mind get drawn away from the real point of what's really happening, I think is one of the big things that has kind of, I don't know, it's been a challenge for me. It's just making sure that I can share that with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. If big plastic gets calms people, climate should too.
Exactly. Exactly. It's just so many like moving pieces. Sometimes it's hard to like make sure that we're keeping everyone up to date on, the real resources you need to follow, what's true, what's not, propaganda, all this stuff. It just can get so overwhelming at times.
Yeah. It is really complicated. It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
And it can be really like, I don't know how else to say it, but kind of a bummer. Sometimes it's kind of a bummer, climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the aspects of it. And I know there's a lot more gravitas with that, but I'm curious, so what, in working in this sector with like the real issues that people are facing, what gives you hope?
I think the people that I work with give me hope, and especially being in like the higher education environment for so long, watching students who over their 4 years have grown so passionate about a topic like sustainability and about the climate crisis, and seeing that if people my age don't want to give up, and then people younger than us, they're learning these things even at younger ages than we were, and they're able to grow up with the information that it will take us to continue to fight this crisis. I think that's kind of what gives me hope, is just knowing that although some people may not listen, some people gave up years ago, we still have a new generation of people that are being raised who understand the values of sustainability, who understand that even though it can look like there's no way we're going to solve this crisis in the next 20 years, the world is going to have irreversible damage, that we still wake up every day and we want to fight better because we deserve better, because future generations deserve better. And I think when I think about sustainability in terms of making sure that this world, that our communities are sustainable for future generations, that's what keeps me going. Is although at times it can look dark, I don't want to give up because someone kept fighting for me, so I want to keep fighting for someone else.
That's so cool. That's awesome. That's so great. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and do this interview. And I really appreciate all of your like honest feedback about what it's like being in the climate sector. So thank you very much.
Of course, Molly. Thank you.